So maybe that's the future. I don't know, right? So just building, like just thinking about how marketing evolves is very uncertain. So I think that causes a lot more anxiety than my own personal, oh, I don't know enough about AI, right? It's like it's that because you're so wedded to your identity as a professional saying, hey, I'm a marketing person, right? And as a professional, you're supposed to know what to do
Yeah.
over the next 1 or 2 years, right?
And
And
I
you're like,
think I have a feeling this is not marketing as a function alone.
oh, it's not just, yeah, it's
It could
across.
be HR, sales,
Yeah.
operations.
Yeah.
AI is actually creating this anxiety for everyone because when you are budgeting, when you are creating your overall projections, you really are not sure how things are going to be in 6 months down the line. So that is a challenge.
For example, at MoEngage, we were struggling with how to how to be present in the whole AI generated summaries, right? When someone searches for customer engagement, because the old model was tuned to SEO, now we are like, how can I be in the AI generated summaries? We spoke to a lot of marketing agencies, we spoke to a lot of things, we never got a straight answer. We spoke to a couple of engineers at MoEngage, we said, guys, help us figure this out. And I think in about a month or two, they gave like, okay, here is the model, these are the kinds, this is the algorithm, this looks like this is how the algorithm works. This looks like they give weightage to this, right? So they'll give you more practical inputs in terms of how some of these are working. So I talked to some of my developer friends, who I've been friends with for a very long time, and exchange notes, random curiosity, saying, what does that terminology even mean, right?
Yeah. Welcome back to the Marketing Couch. Thank you for your continued support and for being part of our growing community of B2B marketing professionals. This continues our festival special series where I am bringing you conversation with some of the most accomplished B2B marketing leaders in tech in India. Today's guest is someone who has built marketing functions from the ground up at multiple successful SaaS companies. My guest today is Ashwin. Ashwin serves as the CMO at Innovapptive, a connected worker platform for manufacturing companies. But what makes Ashwin's story particularly compelling is his journey from business development to sales and then to marketing, giving him a unique perspective on the entire customer lifecycle. Before joining Innovapptive, Ashwin spent nearly 7 years at MoEngage, where he built their marketing function from scratch during their journey from 4 million to becoming one of India's leading customer engagement platforms. Interestingly, Ashwin and I worked together at MoEngage when I was leading MoEngage's customer success in India. Ashwin joined when they were at Series A and witnessed their growth through Series B and much beyond. In today's conversation, you will discover why luck and timing are understated factors in startup success and how to recognize the right inflection points. We will discuss the secret to building authentic brands that align with founder beliefs rather than marketing spin. We will also discuss why marketing should be an amplification function, not a discovery function. And finally, Ashwin's take on the Martech stack evolution and why simpler might be better. And if you stay till the end, Ashwin shares his hiring philosophy and what he looks for when building a high performing marketing team in an AI driven world. I'm truly grateful to Ashwin for sharing not just professional insights, but also his honest reflections on the uncertainties we all face as marketing evolves. If you find value in this conversation, please share it with your network. With that, I bring you Ashwin. Hey Ashwin, great to have you on the marketing couch today.
Thanks, Jaydeep. Thanks for having me here, and pretty excited for this.
I have been looking forward to this conversation for a very long time. Just for the viewers' context, Ashwin and I worked together in one of our prior organizations, and we'll talk about it. But I wanted to start off, Ashwin, in terms of you were someone who actually built a very successful SaaS startup brand from India, and wanted to know what is the secret sauce behind this. I mean, how do you measure ultimately the brand success?
Sure. So I think there are two questions. One is the secret sauce part of it, and then there is how do I measure success part of it.
Go for it.
I
Yes.
think I think, look, luck and timing is always an understated factor in a lot of success.
Totally believe it.
Uh, so I think assuming that that secret sauce is in place, and when I say luck and timing, I think it's a combination of a few factors, right? I think one, purely in terms of the product, the timing has to be right. The product has to be at an inflection point when the customer, when the market and the customer that you're trying to sell to needs to be receptive and open for that change and inflection point, right? Otherwise, either you're too early into the market or sometimes you're too late into the market when the market has already been captured by other people. Right? So I think getting that timing right when the product is in the market and that inflection point when the customer behavior or the consumer behavior or the market dynamics are changing. I think that's very important. The other part of luck and timing is the team that you get to work with. So as marketing head, I can choose the people that I work with within marketing, but I cannot choose the rest of the organization that I work with, right? So whether it's the management, my CEO, CFO, the founders, their peers, like the head of sales and the head of product and all the others, the head of customer success and all the others, right? So I think those two factors are very important, right? So getting the right team in place and then making sure that the product or the service, whatever it is that you're selling, is at the right inflection point. So if you are in that lucky place and all the planets have aligned within these two, I think half of the work is done, right? The other half of it comes is just boils down to your execution. So if I were to sort of look at it and say, okay, luck and timing is there. Now let's look at the other half, which is the execution piece. I think fundamentally, I strongly believe the secret sauce is two things, right? I think one, you have to have an A-class team because marketing is such a wide space that it impacts that it needs to collaborate and work with pretty much every single other function within the
Functions.
organization, right? So, and then from branding to demand gen to events to marketing, customer retention, upsell, everything, right? Like marketing has some support role or some, contribution to make in across the entire organization, even talent branding, for instance, right? Where you
Agreed.
have to work with HR. So I think unless you hire a team which takes ownership, which executes fast, which is focused on outcomes, which is humble and is collaborative, it's you cannot build anything. That's one part of the secret sauce. The other part of the secret sauce is having a relentless focus on what's really important for the customer. I think if you have these two things in place, I think the execution risk is largely taken care of. Right. So that's the way I look at it. When I look at when someone asks me about a secret sauce, or when I reflect back on what made some of the work that I did successful in the last 15, 20 years that I've been working, I think it predominantly boils down to that luck and timing, and then having an A team and being relentlessly focused on the customer.
Yeah, I think these three, I mean, each of these three pillars are super critical and completely agree with you on that. One of the challenges that I often see that for B2B marketers is working as a glue, right? Because you, like you mentioned, you work cross functionally. So you bring
Mm,
in the product team, the engineering team, the sales team, finance because you need money, the customer success team in the parlance of SaaS tech companies. So, how hard or easy it is to orchestrate that, considering the promise the brand makes to the customer, be it on the product specific features and functionalities, and also about the delivery of it, the customer success or customer support part of it. All of that put together is what your brand delivers, right?
mm,
And marketing really to some extent sort of have direct control on only the messaging and the distribution of that, taking that story to the customer. But we know it's hard once the customer comes on board where the rubber hits the road, right? To manage that part where what is happening in support, one or two tickets go bad or an experience goes bad, how this can turn up, a feature that was promised did not get delivered, right? Or maybe a customer last minute ask and engineering is already tied up, so many other factors which are real life factors, right? How does really marketing control that, to control the promise, making sure that is getting delivered, right?
I think that's a good question, right? While marketing is held responsible for the brand awareness and brand perception, it is not just the marketing's department job to build a brand, right? Brand gets built at each of the touch points that the customer has across the organization, right? It could even be a candidate who's interacting with you during an interview phase, right? It could even be a customer who's browsing your website anonymously, right? So it could be so many different touch points, and whether or not the brand promise holds true at each of those touch points is what makes the brand believable, right? Otherwise, it's just marketing spin. I think fundamentally, I think it's important that marketing has to align with what the founders believe, especially in a startup setting, right? With what the founders believe their brand should be. The fundamental reason why somebody started a business, right? The fundamental their sort of value systems that they are bringing in into the culture of the company. And I think it's marketing's job to understand that and translate that to the external as well as internal world. If the brand that you're trying to build is not something that is driven by the founder's belief and the value system and their way of working and their reason for even starting something, then there's going to be a huge gap in what happens at each of the touch point versus what marketing is saying. What marketing is communicating as a brand. Because it's impossible for marketing to control each of these touch points. It's only the founder, and then, the founders who build that culture and make sure that it propagates across the organization. So if what marketing is projecting as a brand is different from what the founders or the organizational culture believes, founders way of working and their reason for actually starting the organization, if there is a disconnect, then it's going to fail. So I think that is how I look at it, right? Are we saying, or are we projecting a brand that I can feel confident is going to resonate across internally within the organization, because that's what the founders and the initial founding team is pushing for, right? Because that truly resonates with their belief system. So, for instance, with MoEngage example, right, when we did the whole rebranding, there were a lot of ideas floating around saying, "Hey, what should our brand be?" But I think fundamentally, Ravi, Yashwant, all the founding members, the founding team was very clear that we do not want to be the sexiest technology company, right? We don't want to be the most innovative. We don't want to be the largest or the biggest. They were very clear that we want to be the most trusted customer engagement, a trusted brand in the customer engagement space, right? And the way we will build trust is by being obsessively customer first, right? They said, this is what I truly believe in, right? I may not have the most fanciest features, that's okay, right? I may not be the, AI innovator, be some, they were very clear that this is what we're going to be. So then we projected that belief system internally and externally, saying, look, this is what the organization stands for. This is who we are. This is why we even exist, right? And it's on the founders and the management team because they bought in that culture. The culture kind of seeped in across the organization, whether it is post sales, pre sales, product, whatever it is, right? So now the what marketing is saying is communication, and what the customer is actually experiencing at each of those touch points, there is a certain amount of resonance, right? Now the brand becomes more believable. So that's the way I look at it, right? I can't, my job is not to tell the fanciest of stories, right? My job is to just bring out the reality in terms of what is the culture and the belief system of the organization itself.
True. So I think that's how the authenticity comes across. Otherwise, it will, I think every juncture here and there, you can only fake it till to an extent, right? Which is why I think true brands or the good brands last long because of their authentic. They also go through metamorphosis. They also go through the changes and to keep up with the pace based on the market changes, the external forces, and that is important as we know, right? But I think being true to who you are at that point of time and letting your audience know that in the most authentic way is probably the sweet spot, right?
Yep.
So building brand takes time, right? And I think no matter how much we would love to have a brand in 3 months or 6 months. Ultimately, it is a sum of a many things, right? Something that we
mm,
say, something that is delivered, something that is experienced, something that we stood by. It's a test of time, and that's how people build that image. So
mm,
one of the let's switch the gear a little bit. So B2B marketing, as we have seen in last decades or so, has evolved or evolving really really fast, and that probably is driven by, to some extent, like we were attending that event recently where we talked about, funnel is dead, right?
mm,
um, or brand to funnel, or the buyer journey is not what we think of as an organic way, right? Moving step one to step two to step three.
mm,
It is more zigzag. There is increased competition in the market, no matter which space you or which category you go in. There is a
mm.
budget pressure which is increasing. And then, of course, there is an explosion of AI driven tools and things like that in the market. So, what do you think? Where is marketing going and in 2025, and how should marketers or B2B marketers look at this and think, and what are the top priorities they should be having in their mind?
Sure. I think for me personally, right, I think you're absolutely right in that things are changing fast. For me personally, I think I find it very important that I should continue to stay curious and continue to learn while building upon the wisdom of my experience. I think it's also important to be curious and be humble and learn. And especially with AI coming in, I think it's important that all of us go back to school to learning, to having that hands-on experience of actually working with AI and actually building out our own AI stack,
Right.
as people call it, right? And I think that's important. Um, I think second, look, fundamentally, marketing is about, you to customers, right? Whether they are your customers or they are your prospects. So they're not your customers yet, but they will be your customers at some point in the future. I think fundamentally it's about adding value, right? Now, adding value can be a quantifiable, metric that they can actually see on a dashboard, or the value could be something that's a bit more emotional in nature, which is not very quantifiable. And I think fundamentally marketing is about that. I mean, that's what I honestly believe. So all the complexity that you're talking about, I think that's just the evolution of the world, right? Marketing has been around for centuries when people were possibly using pigeons to carry messages as well, right? And now marketing still exists as a function. So yeah, I mean, there are multiple channels, the buyers are more technologically mature, they have a lot more information at their fingertips. It's not a linear function. I mean, all of that is fine, but end of the day, marketing is about adding value. So I think as long as you stay true, for me at least, as long as I stay true to these principles of being curious, humble, and then having a learning mindset, and at the same time focusing on the customer and how can I add value to them, right? And if you have to add value, you have to first deeply understand them, right? Like you would think it's value for a customer, but if it's not value for them, then is it really value at all?
That's true. Yeah.
So being very customer centric and always thinking about what is really valuable for them. I think for me at least, I use that as two anchor points. Right? So to kind of navigate this whole chaotic, uncertain sort of world around us. But that's the way I look at it.
So Ashwin, you spend a fair amount of time in the startup space and tech startup space in specific.
Mm.
What are your observations on some of the common mistakes that you see early stage founders or even marketers make, and how they could probably avoid that? Anything that comes in mind?
Sure. I think number one, hire. So I'll talk about both the mistakes at a founder level that I have seen, and second, mistakes at a marketing level that I've seen, right? See, at a founder level, I think first thing is you'll have to determine what sort of a marketing person do you need. And that depends a lot on the kind of company that you're trying to build. That depends a lot on the founder's own value system and the culture that they are trying to build. And that depends a lot on the customers and how they prefer to buy. So think through all of those functions and then think through all of those factors before deciding what sort of a marketing person do you need. So I'll give you an example. For instance, like Innovapptive, the current company that I work with, our typical deal sizes or minimum deal sizes are 100, 150K. for us, when in fact, when I got into the company 2 months ago, it was like, hey, we don't want to. One of the things that my CEO founder told me was, hey, we don't want to go after deals which are less than 100K. That's too small. But at MoEngage, a 100K deal is something that people, celebrate. They're like, oh my God, that's a pretty big deal. So you have to understand these dynamics and really understand, what is the kind of product that I sell? What is the market maturity? How do customers prefer to buy this? So without having that understanding, don't try to bring a marketing leader on board, right? Like bring a junior marketer who can help you figure this out. But till the time you figure that out, I would not recommend hiring a marketing person at all, right? Um, Second thing,
So, will it also be fair to say that till you find a product market fit, is that something that is
it's not just a product market fit. I think it's also a GTM market fit.
okay?
It's not just though people want my product, right? I mean, too often that I see founders coming in saying, hey, I've got 20 customers, 30 customers. I want to bring a marketing VP on board, right? I'm like, why do you need a marketing VP, right? Like, what is that person going to do? Do you want that person to be very heavy on the product marketing side of things? Do you want that person to be very heavy on the SDR side of things? Do you want that person to be an expert on content and digital? Like, what is it? And often it's like, oh, I'm not really sure, right? I just want pipeline, right? Like that's not going to happen magically, right? So you need to figure it out. Like what sort of person do you want? What sort of person makes sense for your business and for your customers and the way they buy from you? So that's point number one. I think second part of it, you already touched upon it when you said product market fit. I strongly believe marketing is not a discovery function. So
Correct.
don't get a marketing person thinking that they will discover all of these things for you, right? They can amplify. Marketing is an amplification function, right? So
So,
if you've already discovered in some shape or form, right, it doesn't have to be codified, but instinctively, if you have discovered, hey, this is how my customers prefer to buy, this is the kind of behavior that my customers have, this is the kind of products, this is the kind of price points that I'm selling at, then you bring in a marketing leader who can amplify all of this, right? Who can build scalable, codified playbooks around this to kind of help you get from whatever 3, 4, 5 million to 100, 200, 300, whatever million that is, right? Before that, I would strongly recommend don't bring a marketing leader. Have one or two junior marketers, have one or two salespeople, but you need to be in the thick of things to kind of figure this out, right? You cannot outsource this function to a marketing department or even a sales department. Broadly, that's one that I see.
in the beginning, one can, I mean, there are many companies who like to explore the PLG route, and marketing becomes more like a support there to
Hmm.
enable that, and then become like more of an operational person to follow up and making sure the execution is happening flawless, where your product team has a lead on the overall, and you are confident that with your experience again do you can you really decide that on the day one that, oh, this is going to be a PLG? Again, probably that is not possible, because you need to see enough deal and cycle to
Yeah.
really take that call, that is my product is really something that is referred again and again, that drives adoption by its own. We see that our customers are pretty much like self-served, and in enterprise I think that is very, very unlikely.
It is. Yeah. That's why I think it's so important that you have some understanding of all of this before you try to scale your marketing team by bringing a marketing head on board. Um, Otherwise you'll come in and the worst thing that will happen is, you'll end up scaling the wrong things. And after a year or 2 years, you will realize that, oh, this is not going to work for my market and the way my customers prefer to buy from me.
And I think in my experience, what I have seen is that it also depends on the founder's vision and the maturity level. Many times come across founders, with due credit to respect to all of them, they are forced and pressurized to only look at why I'm not seeing high quality pipe. Why my MQL to SQL conversion is so poor. And as we speak, I'm going through one of those conversations. So that's fresh on my head. You have to keep, as I guess, marketing leader, keep, sort of aligning your founder, saying that what is the kind of business ultimately you're trying to build. Are you looking to build an SMB business? Have you seen that you have enough enterprise customers and that's your model? Because these are completely different set of GTM, right? And one works in one segment, even one between HR tech and fintech, the approaches are very different, right? So the cycles are different, the buyers are different, and the
True.
consumption and the way, I guess, communicates completely different. Anyway, so moving to other aspect of it, what are the initial high impact ROI investment you think the early stage founders should consider as far as marketing is concerned, considering whatever we had discussed in the context of that, right? And maybe moving from there to growth stage, just if you can compare these two, probably because I'm asking this because you have seen both.
Sure. See, I think at a fairly early stage, when you are, let's say, still at whatever, half a million, 1 million, 2 million kind of a thing, right, in terms of ARR, I think it's important to experiment quite a bit, right? Because you're also still trying to figure out, again, the whole GTM market fit as we are trying to call it, right? So I think it's important to experiment with different ways and different channels to figure out how something works or how customers prefer to evaluate, buy, all of that stuff, right? So I think that's important. So if you were to ask me, I think that's the most impactful investment that a founder can make. Because look, I mean, I get it, right? At an early stage, you don't really have the luxury of thinking about long-term brand building, right? I mean, you have to live quarter on quarter. You have to earn your right to survive another quarter. That's really how it works. So I do understand the pressures of pipeline and leads and all of that, right? So, but I think it's important to acknowledge that, look, we still don't know. We are experimenting. We'll what works and what doesn't, and we should have some level of investments dedicated to that. Sort of look at it and say that, oh, I know digital works. I'm just going to focus on digital and ignore everything else. Then it's not going to work, right? Basically you're increasing the number of variables and how many things can go wrong. So I think that's one. But I think beyond a certain scale, and I honestly believe once you have figured out some sort of generic idea of product market fit and a GTM fit, as I call it, right? Once you've figured this out in some shape or form, that's when I think you'll have to think a little bit more long term in terms of brand building, right? Now, again, I'm not saying that you start, doing brand only campaigns when you're at 5 million, because again, at 5 million, 6 million, 7 million, 10 million, 20 million, whatever it is, you are still focused on growing as fast
Growth,
as possible,
basically.
right?
Yeah.
You do not have the luxury of saying, I'm going to do something now, and the results of it will come in 18 months later, right? So, but I think you'll have to strike that balance and say, there's going to be some, most of the things that I'm going to do is going to be fairly short term oriented, but with the understanding that each of the short term activities, campaigns, marketing stuff that I do eventually adds up to something larger over the next 18 to 24 months. So think of these short term activities with that mindset, saying that each of this is a stepping stone, each of this adds up and compounds eventually, rather than looking at this in isolation. Because I honestly feel that when we look at it from that mindset, that's when you start connecting these steps together rather than thinking of each of these steps as individual siloed experiments or siloed bets. So you could do a piece of content, for instance, saying, hey, I don't know if it'll work, but let me experiment it. You could also do an event saying, I don't know if this is going to work, but let me experiment it. But as long as you understand that, look, the content, the event, the SDR calls, the digital marketing, the customer marketing, case studies, whatever it is that I'm producing, eventually needs to compound and eventually it needs to build that authentic brand perception that we spoke about earlier. I think we should be okay, right? So that's the way I would look at it in terms of trying to balance out the short-term pressures versus trying to also making sure that we have a lens for the longer term.
So if you were to still like shortlist where you are really an early stage startup, and let's say for our discussion, you have just hit your maybe $1 million ARR. Now you are sort of want to scale up your marketing, and what are the investments that ideally would be good for you to start off? Will it be like content?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Start with content, start with events, have an SDR team,
Hmm.
right? In my books, it can and have one digital marketer. So if I were to look at it, like these three areas, start with it.
So when
Start
you say
with
digital,
events,
is
start with con
performance.
Could be performance, could be just social, basically somebody who's fairly well versed with any digital channel out there under the sun. It could be Facebook ads, it could be organic social, building a thought leadership brand for the founder, whatever it is, right? But place your bets, right? Like start producing content, start going to events, get a couple of SDRs, get them to make calls, have like one sort of a digital person. I'm not saying you should have one person for each of this function. As an early stage startup, you probably cannot afford to have a 7 or 8 member marketing team, but have 2 or 3 people and you get them to sort of, swap across some of these functions every 3 or 6 months, right? So you could have someone who's producing content this quarter, that person can also look at digitally distributing it. Maybe that person can also organize some events next quarter. But place your bets. That's what I meant when I said early stage. Place your bets across different marketing plays, whether it is working with a partner, for instance, right? Like, yeah, place your bets. Like pick a partner, work with them for 6 months, co-write some content, co-produce some events with them and see where it goes. But place your bets.
How much does the founder branding part works and important?
I mean, look, the founder has to be comfortable with it. As with all marketing tactics, anything works and, everything can work and cannot work at the same time, right? So I don't think there's a silver bullet marketing strategy where I'm going to come in and say that, what, founder-led branding is the most amazing thing and everyone should do it.
Mm,
It depends on the founder, right? I mean, some founders do not are not out there on social channels and then taking very because look, founder-led thought leadership works when the founder is open to having or open to broadcasting slightly more opinionated, controversial thoughts out into the market. You cannot be boring, right? I
yeah.
mean, you have to say something that's a bit more controversial, that's going to engage people for or against your viewpoints,
Mm,
right? That's when there is a conversation. If everyone agrees with what the founder is saying,
mm,
then people are just going to forget about the founder, right? They're like, yeah, this guy says, whatever, AI is important. They're like, yeah, of course, AI is important. Everyone knows it, right?
mm,
Or if everyone disagrees with the founder, that's also
mm,
not good, right? Because then you're seriously hurting the brand, right? I mean, you're just just taking an extreme position for the sake of it. But it depends on the founder. I mean, the founder fundamentally has to be one willing to be out there, a bit more controversial, a bit more outspoken, a bit more opinionated, and two has to commit to investing the time it requires to engage with the audience, right? I mean, you cannot just say your opinion and not
mm,
respond to anybody who's trying to engage you in a conversation. So you
mm,
have to have like the founder has to keep aside some time every week to engage with them. If the founder is willing to do that, and if your market is on any one of those channels that we just spoke about,
mm,
right? Whether it's LinkedIn or Facebook or Twitter or Instagram or whatever it is, then yeah, I mean, go for it, do it, right? But that's what I mean. I mean, try to experiment with it, right? As in the initial stages, you try experimenting with a
mm,
few founder-led thought pieces.
mm,
If you feel like, yeah, this is getting very, very usual run-of-the-mill kind of a stuff, we're not saying anything interesting, then either try to say something that's more opinionated, controversial, something interesting, or just stop doing it. Right? I mean,
one of the
clearly that's not a fit.
one of the founders I have seen in recent times, or not that recent times, I actually know him pretty long time, but Vijay Rayapati from Atomic Work. Vijay, I think, does really a good job as a
Yeah,
founder, leading that from a founder brand perspective. And I was having conversation on this platform with Sairam. Even he narrated, his experience of working with Vijay, and I know Vijay for the last 15 years. I have even back then seen that he is a good storyteller. He can engage
yeah,
people, and he understand I mean, he has an art of speaking those nuances pretty well. So you're right. I mean, it actually obviously depends on the founders. But as a marketer, as a marketing leader, early stage marketing leader, I think that is one also sort of ammunition you have to experiment with and try and see that if that cuts as well. I mean, especially in your customer specific meetings and events, it's very important to have founder led conversation, right? And usually founders, if not even the mass market, but with customers, I have generally seen they are
yeah.
good, right? They are good.
Yeah, no, I think that's true. It doesn't like founder-led brand doesn't have to be built only on LinkedIn.
Correct.
It can be built in a closed door roundtable or a formal dinner as well, but with 10 customers, right? Like your founder might be amazing in when they're talking to 5 people versus out there on the social. So you really got to figure out what their preference is, what they are comfortable with,
Yeah.
and yeah, and then experiment in the early stages because you really don't know what works.
Yeah. So Ashwin, you recently joined Innovapptive, right? Let me pronounce it right. Innovapptive. I
Innovative,
actually
yes, that's
was
correct.
almost rehearsing this name. I in fact went to Google to see how to pronounce this. I just wanted to make sure that because I haven't come across this.
Yeah.
What does the name suggests and why this brand name, if I may ask you?
So, okay, so to kind of take a step back, right? I think the company basically builds software for frontline workers in manufacturing companies,
Okay.
right? So that's what we do. So if you look at historically, the company started off with the hypothesis that a lot of manufacturing companies spend millions of dollars building software or buying software for the people in the AC rooms, right? For the back end system. So, which is basically your ERP software, your enterprise asset management software, your asset performance management software, predictive maintenance. A lot of that software is really built for people in the AC rooms. But the frontline workers, the actual technicians in a chemical plant, doesn't have access to SAP, right? They are out there in a huge petrochemicals plant or a huge underground mining operation where they don't even have cell phone connectivity. And a lot of them are still using pen and paper to manage their actual frontline operations. Right? So an operator, before they begin a shift, they go to the plant office, the plant head office, and then they take a printout of a checklist which says, this is going to be my job for the day. Then they go back, do their job for 6 hours, 8 hour shift. They come back, they write everything down. They enter the data into SAP or Oracle or whatever ERP they're using. So the company started saying, hey, can I extend the ERP or the EAM functionality to a mobile device which can be carried on to the frontline, field,
Okay.
right? In a chemical plant or a mining or a oil and gas utilities. And these are very large plants. It's not like an IT or a software company where you have where it's just 500 people sitting in a room, right? Like someone like Dow Chemicals, for instance, has a 40 square kilometer plant, right? It's as big as a small town. So that was the genesis of the organization. So the brand name came from there, where it's innovation in the app or the mobile app for the frontline workers. So
Okay.
that's how the brand name came.
Okay.
Yeah, you're right. It doesn't roll
Demystified.
off the tongue so easily, but that's how the brand name came in.
Sure, sure. And how old is the startup and are you funded? How is it?
Yeah. So Innovapptive has been in business for about, I think, 12 years now. We are a Series B company. Series A was with Tiger, and Series B was with Vista Equity Partners.
Okay. Okay. And you joined as the CMO there. Tell me, what is your charter here?
So the charter is two things, right? I think one, obviously, we have to deliver short-term results in terms of pipeline and growth. But really, the long term, which excites me, is the ability or is the opportunity to build a more purpose-led brand in the manufacturing space, right? So fundamentally, if you look at it, what Innovapptive is doing is helping the frontline workers stay connected across other departments, stay connected to the machines and the equipment they operate with, and stay connected to the back-end ERP or the EAM systems. So it's really building that connected ecosystem for the frontline workers so that they can operate in safer conditions, they can operate in more productive environments, they can operate in a more efficient manner where they actually spend more time doing the actual frontline work rather than waiting for parts or waiting for some paperwork to come in somewhere or just hanging around, right? So I think it's that excites me, right? In terms of that's the charter for me long term, where how do we build a more purpose-led brand which redefines this whole connected worker, connected, frontline operations space. And this is a very nascent space yet.
What is the category
Uh,
called or a subcategory if it is?
it's so the category is not very well defined. Broadly, it's called as connected worker or augmented worker solutions.
Hmm.
But as with any nascent category, different people have different definitions of what a connected worker solution should mean, or what a augmented frontline solution should mean. So I think there's a big opportunity. So for me, the charter is that one is how do we build the short-term pipeline growth engine, at the same time building for a long term category redefinition and association.
Sounds good. So I'm not going to go too deep right now because considering it's still new for you, maybe in our next conversation that could be
Sure.
an area. So let's switch to now the other organization, MoEngage, where you spent close to 7 years, and I believe you joined at a time and in a pretty early stage and build the marketing function pretty much from scratch. So
Mhm.
what was the early brief like to you when you joined MoEngage, if you can recall?
I think the early brief was very clear. I joined MoEngage in 2018, end of 2018, I think, on October, November timeframe. And when I started talking to Ravi and then Yash, and then Nasima, etc., the people, the founding team members at MoEngage, I think the mandate was very clear. We were at, I think, 4 or 5 million in ARR back then. It was like, hey, how do we become a 8 or 9 million or a 10 million company in the next 12 months? So the mandate was clear. It was fairly early stage. It was about
Was it a Series
show
A, B?
the
Where is it?
so so when I started talking to MoEngage, it was a Series A. When I accepted the offer, I think they just raised, or when I actually joined the company, they raised Series B. So
Okay, you
so
have a
literally
sweet
one of my
spot.
first jobs, my first week at MoEngage was, writing a PR for Series B. Hey, we just closed the route. You've joined at the right time. We just closed it 24 hours ago.
Right. Hmm.
Can you do a press release on this and amplify the news?
Okay, so let's just step back. I think just for our viewers' context, can you share who is MoEngage, what they do, and who is their audience, and
Sure.
how they really differentiate?
Sure. So MoEngage operates in the cross-channel, multi-channel customer engagement space, right? So brands have been doing, and MoEngage typically sells to B2C brands. So the software was meant for a B2C marketer who wants to engage and retain and sell more stuff to their existing customers, right? So if you are a financial services company, for instance, if you're a bank or if you're a retail company, you acquire customers, and once you acquire them, then the question is, how can I continue to engage with them and make sure they buy more stuff from me, right? Like that's over a longer period of time. And that's where MoEngage software would plug in and help the marketer send very personalized communication to their end consumers across different channels, whatever channels they might be in. So understanding the customer behavior and making sure that you're able to send very personalized communication across multiple channels was really what the product did. The differentiation was simple, right? I think a lot of, and then this ties back to the earlier point that I made, saying that the startup needs to be at the right place at the right time. There has to be some inflection point, and I think MoEngage, there were several inflection points that really helped not just MoEngage, but even other companies who are in a similar space, right? So mobile data costs became almost nil, and suddenly every company, every consumer brand which was worried about acquiring users, suddenly was like, hey, acquiring users is not a big problem because data is free. So everyone's downloading apps because they are not constrained by data anymore. Now it's a question of how do I retain them and how do I make sure that they do not uninstall my app from their mobile phones. So that was one inflection point, and obviously the other inflection point was that a lot of software that the consumer marketers were using were really built 25 years ago for a very desktop plus email heavy world. It wasn't really built for a multi-channel digital sort of a world, right? So a lot of consumer brands started realizing that they needed something that was natively built that could help them engage their users who were interacting or who would prefer interacting with them in a very multi-channel sort of a way.
Yep, yep.
So that was more engaged.
Perfect. So the category is called customer engagement platform,
Correct.
which is so I think one of the things that first thing that I noticed that MoEngage brings two, three things very strong on the platform. One was analytics piece of it. Second is the automation piece of it. And I think the third is the breadth of channels that it actually supported. And just being your counterpart at some point of time, I think obviously, one of the things I really sort of want to admire about marketing in MoEngage is that it always helped that kind of amplification the brand has done. The brand was visible in the market So I don't think a sales rep or a customer success person need to really reintroduce the company and explain what space you are in, and what you do, and those fundamental things, right? I think that itself is a big success of marketing. And then it was quite visible, and it continues to be sort of quite visible in the market. You joined somewhere in 2018, right?
Hmm. Yes.
What were the early challenges around that time, and do you remember some of them, and what are the priorities that you managed at that time? Of course, you mentioned one is, of course, from inside out priority, which is, this is where we are about 4 to 5 million, and we want to grow, let's say, 10 to 12. So what were the early stage priorities otherwise you sort of managed at that time, back in 2018, 19, maybe, let's say, just
Yeah.
before
So I
COVID, I
think,
guess.
yeah, yeah. So I had a good 15 months run before COVID hit, by the way.
Lucky you.
So
Good.
yeah. So, but I think, look, there were a few fundamental challenges, right? I think one was building a very strong A-class team because literally, I think back then there were about four people in marketing. So how do we build an A-class team? Second, the category itself or the space itself was growing very fast, right? And second, and because of and in that space, nobody knew us. There were our competitors who were much bigger than us, who were three times bigger than us, and who were more visible in the market. Broadly, those were the two challenges that we had to solve for. Right. So one was how do I build an A-class team which can execute fast, which can execute with a sense of purpose, and at the same time, how do I make sure that my brand is also visible? Like people, when someone is looking to buy the kind of software that we used to sell, how do I make sure that I'm also there at the table? Because we were not at that point in time. So broadly, those were the two challenges that was very important for us to solve for.
And can you share any examples where you took some bets and that paid off, and probably you took some which did not? Do you remember anything that comes
Yeah,
out?
sure. See, I think so. I'll talk about some of the bets that did not work. Right. I think some of the bets that worked is more visible out there. It's all out there in the public facing domain. So I think one bet which one which I think did not work for us very well was I think we bet on performance marketing. I don't think that has worked out very well for us, at least at MoEngage right now. It could be a factor. It could be because we were not very good at it. Could be, or it could also be because not or the kind of customers that we were selling to were not somebody who was very particular about so even today I think when I left MoEngage a couple of months ago, I think paid search or what you call as performance marketing was not really a big growth lever or a growth engine for us, right? And we
Right.
had spent quite a bit of amount and money, time investments on it, right? So I don't think that bet really worked out very well for us. I think the second bet that did not really work out
Would
very
it
well.
be fair, just for our context of the viewer, to say that it did not pay off because of the mismatch of the segment?
Yeah, I think the audience behavior also changed, right? I think, see, fundamentally, if you look at it, there was, okay, so take a step back, right? I think if you look at 2018, 2019 timeframe, there was marketing was broadly seen, especially in B2B SaaS, marketing was broadly seen as a mathematical function,
Mhm.
right? It's like, hey, we have an equation, there are X inputs, there's some processing that happens, and you'll get Y output, and it's all measurable. And you had success stories from India which cracked that model, right? So you had companies like HighRadius, Freshworks, which had cracked this whole mathematical model of performance marketing or hiring a large SDR team with, which is like it's almost like a factory floor where, they've cracked the hiring model, hire from engineering graduates from tier two, tier three sort of colleges and then put them through. It's sort of like how Infosys Wipro used to have campus placements. But I think that started changing in 2020, 2021, 22. When I think, obviously one, performance marketing itself became very expensive. And two, every category started having a lot more competition. So the times changed, right? Like,
Mm.
what used to work in way back in 2016, 17, 18, or even 19, I think it kind of stopped working, at least for us at MoEngage in 2020, 21, 22,
So
right?
even
So
on those days, was MoEngage targeting enterprise, or was it SMB focused?
I think back then it was more digital first focus. So we were mostly focused on selling to other new age, mobile first sort of consumer brands, right? Like Ubers of the world, Big Baskets of the world, Olas of the world, not necessarily the traditional banks or the traditional retailers or the traditional hospitality players and things like that,
Digital first.
right? So while we would sell to an Oyo was a customer, someone like a Marriott would probably was not a big, target for us back then.
Understood.
So yeah, so upper SMB, lower mid-market sort of deals is what we were going after. So it was a fairly land and expand motion. So we would get some of these digital first consumer brands, we would land them in a smaller deal, and then as they grew rapidly, our billing also would grow rapidly with them.
Understood. So it was, I think this is also to do with the business model, the pricing model at that time that actually kind of supported that kind of, I think marketing
Yeah.
strategy. What were the brand building what were the first brand building motion that you tried there?
Honestly, I don't think we ever had a brand building lens, right?
Mhm.
So I don't think we ever had a marketing campaign where we said that this is purely for brand building
Mm,
as such, right? So, we were always very focused on, hey, how is this actually going to generate,
mm,
you know, some business metric for us, right? Whether it is new logo pipeline or existing upsells from existing customers, or it's,
mm,
will it move, a pipeline, upsell, NRR, GRR, like what metric is it actually going to improve,
mm,
right?
mm,
Uh, but I think that's the learning I had. I referenced this earlier as well, saying cumulatively over a period of time,
mm,
all of this works to build a brand,
mm,
right? So it's not necessary that you should start having brand campaigns from day zero saying, I'm going to have a brand campaign or I'm going to have a campaign that is meant only for brand building. The sum total of everything that you do eventually adds up to a brand,
yeah.
right? It starts building the brand. But it's important that you look at this in connection. That's the point I was trying to make earlier,
Mm,
saying that each of these bets you have to be conscious and cognizant that it's adding up to something, right? So you can't look at it in isolation.
yeah. Yeah.
Um,
No, I agree.
so we
So
didn't take too many brand bets that way. I mean, yeah, we
to
were very
me,
clear.
to me, stories are, think of like what you actually talk about in your PR or what you talk about with your analyst relations, right? You are building the brand for the category that you address to or you cater
Yep,
to and you serve. So what is really is your core differentiated value to your segment and category, and why should they look at in their consideration stage is something is to me is the brand is. So when I said brand building, it is not for masses, obviously.
yep.
It is to your for the
Hmm.
target category. Now one thing I really like about MoEngage and appreciate as a marketer is that MoEngage has invested in some good quality assets, studies and reports, or all of those trends studies that year on year that there's a platform SELP. I think that was also something which is a backward
Yeah.
integration, and it was a great initiative. Can you talk about those in terms of thought leadership and assets? At what stage you think is appropriate to do such investments? Because that's also an investment that as a startup you make.
But do it as early as possible. See, while while you're right that each of this is an investment towards building brand for the long term, I think one, we were clear that, hey, even if I, like, for instance, the data backed or research reports that you spoke about at MoEngage, right? Or even the customer education program that we had, we were very clear that this has to be a significant touch point in the customer journey from an anonymous visitor to a booked deal or even an upsell. Like this has to be a
Part of your
significant touch
funnel.
point, right? So we were very clear that this has to, so this can't be that but this is just brand building, so we don't care whether it actually helps or not, right? We were very clear in measuring it. Like it was always a backwards view, as you pointed out. So we would look at a booked deal or an opportunity and then think about, hey, what were the touch points that actually helped in this, right? So we were very clear that it has to fit into the customer journey somewhere, right? And it has to be a significant part of that customer journey. It can't be that, oh, they saw my LinkedIn ad once and and I'm going to count that as a touch point, right?
Mm,
Yeah, I mean, people are scrolling their LinkedIn feeds and then yours is one of the 500 ads they've seen in a day, right? Like that's not a meaningful touch point.
that's true.
So that we were very clear. But coming back to your question, I think it started as early as possible because this is nothing to do with your product, right? This is all about adding value to your customer. So for example, like even at Innovapptive, one of the things that we are trying to build is, hey, how can we build brand Innovapptive's association, not with the category, but with the problem statement, right? So whenever somebody thinks of, let's say, operational inefficiency as a problem statement in manufacturing, That's the pain point they're facing. They should think of Innovapptive as something to do with reducing or improving operational inefficiency,
Hmm.
right? It was the same with MoEngage, right? Where we said if someone thinks of marketing related problems like marketing effectiveness or retention effectiveness in a B2C brand, a marketer in B2C brand is facing this pain point or a problem. I want to be associated with that problem statement. The category association can still happen later. That's okay. But start it as early as possible because while you're still trying to figure out the category and how they buy and how they purchase, I mean, you can start adding value to your audience, right? At some point, all of this will compound and suddenly you'll realize that, oh yeah, people know me, I have a brand.
Agree. And I think one of the fundamental things again, in terms of connecting with your audience, is speaking really about the problem and not about the
Yeah,
solution right upfront. Because it's a psychological part that we connect with problem quick, very quickly, and we feel that someone is hearing us, we are heard, right?
yeah,
Or the language, for example, in B2B, we know, right? I mean, not necessarily your best alternatives are your competitor. It could be an
right.
in-house,
It could be do nothing.
it could be do nothing, right? It could be
Yeah,
nothing,
yeah,
or it could be hiring two resources and augmenting a small
yeah.
team internally
Or
and
an Excel, right? It could be just I'm
Excel,
just going to use
exactly,
spreadsheets.
right?
Yeah,
So I think looking at from that point, helping buyers to make a decision or helping buyers to even understand the landscape or the lay of the land, I think is something that marketing can really help. And true marketing is essentially about all education, right?
yep,
Helping the buyers to make the right decision. So I think just moving on from there, there's just another point I wanted to touch upon. One of the things I know that in MoEngage is that we have done events, which is offline, and we have invested in that, and then we have done digital, which you spoke about, right? So how do you make a balance of that as a leader, and then you also convince your founder, your CFO to sort of align with that, right? Because it's not suddenly on the day one not clear, right?
yeah. So I think see, the first thing is, like I said, right? I think one thing that we did at Mortgage was to spread the bets, right? So we did performance marketing, we invested in paid social, LinkedIn ads, we did events, we participated in trade shows, we did our own large events which cost, $100,000.
Correct.
We did webinars, we produced research-backed content, we invested in analyst relations. So we spread the bets across multiple different
Here I'm
things,
actually only talking
right?
about offline versus online. Just think about that, right? Offline
Yeah,
versus
so
digital.
so we spread the bet, right? And over a course of 12 to 15 months, you kind of start figuring out what is working, what is not working, right? So, and that's visible across the organization because, you don't have to spend too much time trying to convince the CEO because generally at small stages, the CEO is very visible, is very closer to the field, right? So they are most likely involved in half of the sales cycle. They are most likely involved in half of the customer post-sales implementation or ongoing maintenance work, right? So they're mostly involved. And they'll start hearing that, hey, you know what? This customer came in because they met me at this conference, right? They listened to or they listened to one of my customers talk about the solution on stage, right? So they start connecting the dots back with themselves because they're usually much closer to the field than even the marketer, right? So they'll start figuring out like, okay, this is working, this is not working. It's just that you have to spread those bets, look at it over a 12 months window, and then see what is working and what is not working before kind of doubling down on what is working. So for us, that happened, right? I mean, we started investing in a bunch of things. I think by end of 2019, we were fairly clear that, hey, a lot of this, physical offline events that we were doing was actually helping much more than spending money on Google Ads,
Mm,
right? For
mm,
instance,
mm,
that was helping us much more than, our, spending money on my own self-produced events was actually much better than spending money on a trade show. Right? So we kind of figured that out over a course of 12 months, 12 to 15 months. I think the challenge for us was 12 to 15 months. We figured this out and then COVID hit and everything became digital. So all our learnings and assumptions went out of the window and we had to sort of, go through another 12 months of, okay, now what, right? Like, let's experiment and figure out what works in this new world. But I think, as long as you place your bets and as long as you have some mechanism to sort of either you measure it as a marketer, but also the founder, because it's a close knit team. I mean, if you're in an early stage startup, it's literally 50, 60, 100 employees, three or four salespeople, and you're talking to each of those salespeople. So you kind of get that feedback loop. I don't. I mean, if you're not getting that feedback loop, then you need to be worried that, okay, this is really not landing,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
but generally you'll get that feedback loop if you're tuned in.
So Ashwin, how does your Martech stack looks like?
I think so. I've gone through those extremes, right? I mean, I've
Great.
gone through from having a very basic market stack, marketing stack to building like a very complicated marketing stack at MoEngage, or well, not complicated, but a fairly sophisticated marketing stack at MoEngage. Um,
What is the learning
and then I
and
think,
where did you consolidate?
yeah, I think there was a lot of failures as well, right? I mean, we spent like, I think in 2021, we spent $500,000 on an ABM platform, right?
Okay.
Zero ROI, right? And then it's not fun when you have to sit in front of your CFO and justify what happened to that half a million. It's not a small amount,
It
right?
is
I mean,
not
half a
small.
million
Very
dollars when
good.
you're at Series C, this is, when you're at 25, 30 million is a pretty large amount, right? And you're like, I don't know, yeah, we tried it, it didn't work. And like half a million bet is ridiculous, right? So, so I think, that's the kind, I think 2023 is when we kind of said, okay, let's be careful about what we want, what kind of MarTech stack we want to invest in. Let's not just keep buying the shiny new thing that's out
Hmm.
there. Fundamentally, I think marketers end up buying shiny new stuff all the time.
Yeah.
I don't know why, but I think we just have a habit of let me buy one of those as well,
In
right?
fact,
So,
if in fact, so much so in last 3 to 4 years, I'm sure you must have seen when you talk to people, youngsters, interviews, they identify themselves as, I am champion of this platform, and I am expert of this platform. So marketers' own identity is also sort of evolving.
yeah,
Though
I mean, which is
fundamentals
good.
don't change, but Martech has played and influenced that part a lot, actually.
Yeah, yeah. Which is good for companies like MoEngage and Salesforce and,
Exactly,
Adobe's of the
exactly.
world.
Yeah,
Obviously,
yeah.
they've built those perceptions, which is great. But fundamentally, I think, look, you have to design a MarTech system that is simple and works for you.
So how does it look
Uh,
like? I mean,
so at Innovapptive, it's very simple. I mean, we have Salesforce, which is really our
got
CRM.
it.
Then we have HubSpot, which is our marketing
Marketing
automation tool.
automation.
And then we have a LinkedIn Sales Navigator, which is mainly for research and stuff like that. We also have Zoom Info to help build our database and then for some account intelligence and
Have
stuff
you
like that.
have you evaluated Clay?
We've just purchased like a small POC with just one license. We just started
Sure.
experimenting, one or two, I think. We just
Mm,
started experimenting with
mm.
Clay. I think there's a lot of promise, obviously. I think we're still in very early stages of experimenting with the new age AI sort of tech stack that's out there, right? I think
Mm.
we're very, very early stage.
What do you do with email? It's HubSpot or
No, for email campaigns, outbound email cadences or automation, we use Salesloft.
okay.
Uh, yeah, so no, Salesloft. Um, but again, I'm not a very big fan of some of these email outreach tools.
Mm.
Um, the way I'm thinking about AI is really about how can it help us do deep account and person research so that marketing can be way more personalized based off that deep research that we have done rather than trying to figure out how many emails or which subject line works best and things like
Until that time that happens, I guess the quality of SQL will remain shit.
that. Yeah, no,
Seriously.
I think till that time you need to have a human intervention to
Exactly.
determine what is good
Exactly.
quality and what is not good
Exactly.
quality.
I mean,
So you need human intelligence to figure that out.
it goes back to the fundamental you mentioned, right? Knowing your customer well, right? And now knowing your customer would only, I mean, that will only be clear when I know that this is my ICP, but this my ICP is also getting influenced by X. Here is a obstructor or someone who may create objections. So he's also an important, or she's also an
Hmm.
important, and then so it's just a team, right? And that's how the ABM programs are in a way. By the way, I'm also not a big believer of tool based ABM. I understand that
Yeah.
some of it has its own advantages, but I spoke to recently quite a few people. You'll be surprised that they have given up on tools part. They are managing the old fashioned Excel sheet way.
Yeah, I don't know. I think absolutely. I mean, look, I always tell this as a funny story, right? But I think there's a lot of learning there. My first job was at Wipro,
Mm.
right? Straight out of college. This was, I think, way back in 2006 or so, 6 or 7, I think. And Wipro was already a billion-dollar company. They did not have a CRM, right? Like it was spreadsheets, right? A billion-dollar business, spreadsheets, and working beautifully. right? So I'm like, if Wipro could manage like $1 billion business without having all this fancy MarTech, all of these tools. So at some point, I think you have to really think through saying, hey, does this really make fundamental business sense, or am I just being swayed by, the trends and the shiny new thing that's out there,
See, the origin
right?
of
So
CRM, just for our discussion, right? I remember going back to the old days of Oracle CRM and all of that. The fundamental of CRM is that can I add more fields in a way while I'm creating the opportunity,
mm,
and when I'm onboarding a customer, by then I need to have
yep,
multiple contacts. I need to understand what problem I'm solving for them. I need to understand that who are the competitors, what were their alternatives, all of that information. In real life, we know the CRM is only filled 10 to 15% or 20% fields.
yep,
So it continues to be 80% empty. And I have
yep,
seen that on the other side of the fence, right? Being in the customer success, that it is a challenge. We only have one contact in an account. The contact leaves
yeah.
and you're in jeopardy.
You just, yeah, and then the churn is suddenly your responsibility, right? It's
Suddenly
like,
your responsibility, right?
hey, this was a controllable churn. Why did the CS team not work proactively?
Exactly,
Oh,
exactly. What were the objections they made at the time of purchase? This is all part of your CRM. How many people actually fill that up? And the fact of the matter is, with AI, some of these are going to be taken care, right?
yeah,
And that's a good news. Otherwise, a rep will only do that admin jobs, filling sheets and all that, right?
yep,
But to be honest, to do justice to all of that, I think that's how CRM came into being, that all of that data points, which may be a
yeah,
little overwhelming for an Excel sheet, can be managed in one central source of truth.
yeah, absolutely. It started off as a system of records, and it's still a system of
It's
records.
a still, yeah, it is still a system of records. So you spoke about AI. I just wanted to briefly touch upon, is there any early experiments that you're doing for AI?
So one is, yeah, I mean, we're trying to figure out how AI can cut short, well, not just cut short, but also improve the research quality when we are looking at a very ABM style of functioning, or ABM style of marketing, right? So one part of it is that, so Clay and custom ChatGPT prompts and workflows which incorporate all of that is something that we are experimenting with. Second part of it, which we have not started, but we'll start, but I want to start is rethink the website experience itself. I think the websites that we have, most vendors have, is something that was built 25 years ago. It hasn't fundamentally changed, right? You still go and it's sort of like a big giant digital, very detailed digital billboard, and it's on the user to kind of navigate and figure out where to find what. But I think with AI coming in, I think there's an opportunity to fundamentally rethink that whole website experience, right? I mean, I do feel that it can be a lot more simplified where it's basically a landing page with like some sort of a chatbot. So you have some of the basic information readily available, and but then everything else is very conversational in nature. So each visitor asks a question and kind of gets an answer that's very tailor made for them. So I think there's a tremendous amount of opportunity there. But those are the two areas where I'm looking at. Apart from the other usual,
Usual content.
using AI for some of the design elements and
Yeah.
copy support and things
Mm.
like that, which I think is table stakes these
Table
days.
stakes this is, yeah. But
Yeah.
fantastic. I mean, I love those two areas. It's such an important area and I think overlooked. The website is a big opportunity, without a doubt. So let's switch the gear and I want to talk a little bit about your own career. You
Mm.
spent your initial years you started off as, I think, a business development executive, and at Wipro, you just mentioned that. And then you moved through sales roles, right? And I think with Eka, you moved to marketing, if I'm not
That's
mistaken.
correct.
What made that change?
I don't think it was a,
Plan
I
one.
mean, in hindsight, I can say that, yeah, it was a grand, but I don't think it was a grand plan at that point in time. I
Hmm.
think I just felt the job was challenging and I felt that I would learn something new and I just made the jump. That's pretty much it.
Hmm.
And obviously I got the opportunity as well. So it wasn't a well thought out plan. It was just, hey, am I going to learn something new? Does this sound interesting? Is this something that excites me? Yeah, okay, let's make the jump and then we'll figure out what happens.
Did your sales role or BD role helped anyway in your marketing career?
Absolutely. I think fundamentally it has helped me build better relationship with sales teams. Because I have been on the other side of the table, right? So I know, the pressures and the trials and the tribulations of of a salesperson. Um, so I think it has, yeah, so it has helped me build better relationships. It has helped me build credibility because I can talk their language. I can explain certain things in marketing in a way that makes sense
Mm,
for sales,
mm,
right? So that does help. Second, I think sales also, I mean, I strongly believe that more marketers should spend more time with customers, right? I mean, I don't think a lot of, especially in B2B, I don't think a lot of marketers spend enough time with their customers, right? And sales being very customer facing, you end up spending a lot of time with customers, and the feedback can be very brutal, right? So you end up developing that mentality of, because in sales you're fighting for every meeting. You do a cold call or you do a cold email, that is basically you're trying to earn the right to have a 15-minute meeting as a follow-up. In that 15 minute you are earning the right to have another 1 hour demo. In that 1 hour you are earning the right to have like some sort of a value prop or a proposal, right? In that proposal or work you're earning the right. So
it's
at
an
every
incremental
stage it's
learning.
brutal,
Mm,
right? At every stage, you're earning the right to the next stage, right? So you can't be fluffy, right? You can't, like, you have to provide immense value to the customer at that stage so that you are outwinning the competition, right? So it teaches you to be very customer focused. It teaches you to be a lot more brutal and ruthless with your own marketing things, right? Where you're like, what does it really like? Does it earn me the right, for me to go to the next level? So I think that's important. At least for me, that has really worked as a marketer.
mm. Yeah, no, I think that's really a very important thing. I learned that experience from my customer success stint, both in partly in Adobe and then partly in MoEngage. I have a lot to thank because, like you said, that a lot of realities come in front in terms of
Yeah.
how customer perceives, or actually their challenges, their frustrations sometimes, and how they evaluate things. I think the more marketers understand that, they will be able to craft a lot more stronger value proposition. Right. So in terms of your if you are to look at what is really the B2B marketers challenge today, for you to sum up, what would be that in 2025? One or two things that will really sort of will give you a sleepless night, for example.
Yeah, I think one is the one that I'm very worried about is, hey, am I staying or am I sort of matching the pace with which my customer is evolving, right? That the moment a marketer is out of sync with the pace at which the customer is changing, then I think you are in all sorts of trouble, right? I think that's one. I think second for me is, what am I missing out on, right? In terms of learning,
Hmm.
right? Because there's just so many things that are happening that
Hmm.
I honestly find it. I mean, I don't know about others, but I find it very, very hard for me to keep up with especially with the rate of AI change, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it feels like I've learned something 2 weeks later. I'm like, there's something new, right? I'm
Yeah.
like, I'm 40 plus. I can't learn at the pace, a 15 or a 16 or a 20-year-old person can learn,
Hmm.
right? So that forces you to, kind of think through, say that, okay, what can I learn, right? And fundamentally, I think those two is what I think is, at least for me, those are my very two, I mean, those are my two big challenges.
I think
Uh,
I cannot agree more. The fact is that I think, and especially with this AI coming into picture in last 2 3 years, it has created a bit of anxiety. I
yeah,
talk to a lot of people. It's a very similar feeling in the community. The fact that the pace at which you were learning earlier suddenly has like quadrupled, or if not more, right?
yeah,
Anything that you learn in 2 3 months back, possibility is that okay, that's something like outdated, because we are
yeah,
actually dealing with something which is like we call it like a living document, right? So
yeah,
it's constantly changing. And I think even large companies who are marketing solution companies like of Salesforce or Adobe or even MoEngage, I'm very sure it is a challenge for them to adopt an AI technology piece of it, embed that into your product's functionalities. Right now, we are at a stage, I think, where we are looking at tooling problem, right? So we are relating AI with tool. But we will be soon getting into an age where, like you mentioned, how if the customers are changing faster than I know, chances are there that everything will be conceived from an AI standpoint, right?
Yeah.
not specifically, okay, today I do email manually and tomorrow I'll do an automation, an agent will send that out. That's like moving from human doing to robot doing, right? But imagine when we are actually entering where the product is conceived from a perspective of how artificially it is, artificial intelligence is built into it,
Yeah.
and the way customers will perceive that is completely going to be different from, I think so. That is very scary part of it.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. I mean, one, it's not necessarily about, hey, am I going to lose my job, right? I think it's
Yeah,
necessarily
yeah.
about, am I going to be fit? Am I learning at the pace in which my customers are changing and learning,
Or am I
right?
going to be continue to be relevant in my own
Yeah,
function continuously? Because
yeah,
one of the I think one of the good part is that nobody knows it today. I've spoken to
yeah,
now
but
a lot of leaders. Everybody admits that they don't have a full picture. Nobody has a full picture.
nobody has a full picture. No, you're absolutely right. But that does cause
Yeah,
anxiety. I
that
mean,
causing that.
not just in terms of my own personal learning, but even in terms of how we are building marketing functions, right? Like for instance, today my CFO was asking, saying, hey, where are we going to hire, or what is the organizational structure that we need to look at them? Like, look, that's a very difficult question for me to answer. Will I even need performance marketing managers next year, or will just Google do it themselves, self-optimize? I don't know. I don't know. Like literally, I don't know, right? Like, do I need somebody dedicated for some function, or should I just have five different generalist marketers who can play around with a lot of AI tools? And maybe that is going to be the future,
Look at the way
right?
SEO has evolved, right? Like
Right. So
completely, you know.
yeah, so it presents a lot of challenges for marketing, right? I mean, I'm sure it's for every other
I was
function too,
speaking
but
with one of the Silicon Valley based marketing leaders recently, and she said that they're hiring officially an AI prompt engineer
engineer.
in their marketing team.
Yeah, right. That's what I meant, right? Like, will the future of an SDR team be all AI SDR with a actual pre-sales human attached to it? Maybe that is going to be the future of an SDR team, right?
I'm
Like, why do you
already
need
thinking
humans to
about
set up?
that. Actually,
Yeah, like,
what
the AI SDR can set up meetings and,
exactly?
you'll show like standard demos and then you get the pre-sales engineer. I don't know. I mean, I'm just thinking of like a, like, could be 2 years down the line. I don't know, right? Like, so it's very difficult
Or
for us to
maybe done
predict.
in parts, the validation, right? That okay, I at least do a first sanity check of even if from a match company to company, does it even make sense?
Yeah,
Before even I dial the number and see if the fitment from solution
yeah.
perspective is there or not.
Yeah. And it's not just for me, right? I mean, it also makes sense for the customer because look, nobody likes to buy software, right?
Absolutely,
Because it's such a painful
absolutely, absolutely.
process, right? So I'm sure if I give the option to a prospect where it's like, listen, don't talk to a human, right? Self-serve, look at this. This is my product. This is what it does. Here's an AI agent which will explain to you what it does. If you think this is a fit, then let's talk as human to human. I'm sure they'll pick it up, right? They're like, then I don't have to deal with this scheduling of calendars and asking of 10 different questions and blah, 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 and all of it, right? Like, so maybe that's the future. I don't know, right? Like, so just building, like just thinking about how marketing evolves is very uncertain. So I think that causes a lot more
Lot
anxiety
more
than my own personal, oh, I don't know enough about AI, right?
right.
It's that because you're so wedded to your identity as a professional saying, hey, I'm a marketing person, right? And as a professional, you're supposed to know what to do
Yeah,
over the next 1 or 2 years, right?
and
And
I
you're like,
think I have a feeling this is not marketing as a function alone.
oh, it's not just, yeah, it's
It could be
across.
HR, sales,
Yeah.
operations. AI
Yep.
is actually creating this anxiety for everyone because when you are budgeting, when you are creating your overall projections, right, you really are not sure how things are going to be in 6 months down the line. Right?
Yeah.
So that is a challenge. What do you see, Ashwin, while hiring a talent, or what do you value?
See, I don't think that has changed much, right, over the last 10 years or so. I look for hunger. I think that's very important. If you have the hunger and the drive, you'll figure things out, right? So that is one. Second, I look for ownership. Your job is not done till the outcome is achieved, right? Yes, and that this is very important in a startup where, or even in small organizations where you can't say that, oh, I did my job, the other person didn't do their job,
How do
right?
we
Like,
assess that in an interview?
so that's a difficult one. I think one, I typically try and do as much rep checks as possible, especially if it's beyond a certain level in terms of seniority. Second, I try to ask more deeper questions saying, hey, what were you responsible for, right? More often than not, people will say, I was responsible for revenue, and I further dig deeper and say, was your variable tied to your revenue? 99% of the time, the answer is no. Right? So, like, then how can you say that you are responsible for it, right? I'll ask them saying, can you show me an example or walk me through a project where you actually delivered a business outcome? Right? So more often than not, if they've not really done it, you will find these answers to be very superficial. They'll answer all the right things because they would have done secondary research, whether through AI, ChatGPT, whatever it is. But when you ask questions saying, give me examples of how it went wrong, that's when they'll start stuttering, right? That's when you'll know that, okay, because you could not have achieved that outcome with five failures without having five failures along the way. So those are the ways where I try to dig a little bit deeper. But beyond a certain level of seniority, I also try and do ref
Ref checks.
checks, right?
Yeah.
And more discrete ref checks. I'm open with the candidate as well, saying, look, I'm going to do discrete ref checks. So
Perfect. So we just spoke about it, but again, I wanted to check what do you do to keep yourself updated? Do you read podcast, listen to something, go
I
and
mean, I do follow some
socialize?
podcasts, yeah, I mean, there are a couple of AI related podcasts which I do follow, which is more practical use cases of how people are using AI across different aspects of life, right? I mean, it could be a lawyer, it could
Which
be
are
a healthcare
those?
professional.
Maybe I can add that in my show
Uh,
note.
recollect the exact, yeah, just give me 1 second. Let me pull that up.
Okay, so why don't you
There's
share
just
that
so
maybe
many.
offline?
Yeah, I'll just share that
Yeah,
offline with
that's
you.
fine. I'll add that in the show note later.
Yeah,
Anything that you think will add value to the community, right?
sure.
Yeah. So, so
So one is podcast.
mhm.
The other one is I try to talk to a lot of my own team members, especially the younger ones who've been experimenting with AI. So I do talk to them. I do try and understand, saying, okay, show me how you built this, right? Like, show me how you've done this. The third thing is I talk to my developer friends. I think they are more tuned to what's actually happening on the AI side of things than us non-developer, non-technical people. And funnily, I think they'll give you better inputs. Like for example, at MoEngage, we were struggling with how to be present in the whole AI generated summaries, right? When someone searches for customer engagement, because the old model was tuned to SEO. Now we are like, how can I be in the AI generated summaries? We spoke to a lot of marketing agencies. We spoke to a lot of things. We never got a straight answer. We spoke to a couple of engineers at MoEngage. We said, guys, help us figure this out. And I think in about a month or two, they gave like, okay, here is the model. These are the kinds, this is the algorithm. This looks like this is how the algorithm works. This looks like they give weightage to this, right? So they'll give you more practical inputs in terms of how some of these are working. So I talked to some of my developer friends, who I've been friends with for a very long time, and I exchange notes, just random curiosity, saying, what does that terminology even mean, right?
Yeah,
And then they
and
kind of
usually they're
explain
the
to me,
ones who like to solve these problems
yeah.
first, right? I mean, some of them you
And
already
they don't
know.
mind explaining to you, right? I mean,
Yeah,
they understand that you're a noob when it
yeah,
comes to technology,
true.
and they're like, "Yeah, okay, fine, I'll dumb it down for you." So yeah, that's typically how I try to keep up. But it's not enough. I mean, the anxiety is still always there.
So, what is the best way to keep in touch for people or get
Or
in
just
touch?
ping me on LinkedIn.
Okay.
You
So
know,
I'll add your
I'll,
LinkedIn handle
yeah,
in the show
absolutely
note.
feel free to do that. Yep.
Awesome. Ashwin, it has been really a great pleasure for me and a fantastic time I had with you chatting about learning what are you doing at Innovapptive and then obviously about MoEngage. Also about how are you keeping yourself updated, what were the challenges that you're facing in your early days, what are the challenges that you face today, the uncertainties that we spoke about, the emerging of AI and AI tools and technologies so deeply into marketing. I think has been a fascinating conversation personally for me, and I'm sure the viewers will also find a lot of value from this conversation. So thank you very much for sharing your time and coming to the show today.
Thanks, Jaideep. Thanks, Jaideep. Appreciate it. This was a fun conversation. Appreciate this.